Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Game of Code, Level Up, or Get Wrecked. My name is Ike Wava. I'm going to be your host for today's broadcast. Now, before we get started, I'd like to go through some webinar housekeeping tips. Everyone is currently on mute and will remain so throughout the recording. Please use the chat window to inform us of any audio or technical issues. If you experience any sound issues, we recommend calling in via phone. Forgive me, my voice, I'm losing my voice a little bit, via phone instead of using your computer's audio. We'll conduct 3 live polls throughout the webinar, so please join us through those polls. Throughout the webinar, please use the question feature to ask about any of the topics being discussed. And then also, and today's webinar is being recorded, and a link to an edited version will be sent to all attendees post-event. So today we have Yas Johnston, who is Armor's lead threat analyst. Yas, can you tell us a little bit about what you do for Armor and what your role within Armor is?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So as you can see, I've spent some time in the military, and we had a saying which was stay ahead of the boom. And that's what my job here at Armor is. I try to take us from being reactive to proactive and making sure that we're ahead of any known actors. I try to know the client's threat landscape so I can make sure that we're ahead of that boom.
That's awesome. And so also just as a heads up, we also have Chris Hinckley, who is the head of the threat resistant unit that is on the chat. So as we're going through the session, as I mentioned earlier, if you do have any questions that you really are itching to get it answered, feel free to use that chat function. Indubitably, this is going to be an awesome session with Yas and with Chris participating. And so please feel free to bring in those questions and we'll make it a point to address them throughout. So let's look at the agenda today. So today what we'll do is that we'll talk just a high level, do an intro of who Armor is. So for those that are familiar with us, you'll know this, but for those that are not, this may be a first intro of who Armor is. So very high level. And then we'll set the stage, we'll level up and play this game. And so be able to say, hey, here's what we're going to do, here's the simulation, here's what it's going to look like. And then at the end, what we'll do is that we're going to wrap up and provide you tips to protect your data. So just at a very high level, who is Armor? Armor, we are a cloud security company. We protect our customers' data and application in any environment. So when we say any environment, what we mean is that if a customer's application is in a private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud environments, we're able to protect them. Also, if a customer has employees that are remote, or are using laptops and desktops, we're able to also protect those environments as well. Ultimately, there's 3 use cases that we have within Armor that we address for our customers: threat detection or response. So our focus is not just on alerting customers to say, hey, we think there's an issue, or here's something that is going on in your environment. We're really focused on detecting issues and threats in a customer's environment and equipping them and giving them the tools to respond to it, the insights to respond to those threats. The second thing that we do is also we streamline compliance. So when you look at compliance, compliance is in the forefront of everything we do here within Armor. And so whether it's within our technology stack and the controls that we address, that we give the paperwork to our customers, or whether it's being able to remediate or reduce the risk of potential breaches and attack within the public cloud, as an example, compliance is in everything that we do. And then finally, we do have, we protect customers' mission critical application and data. So if a customer is not comfortable hosting in a private cloud or public cloud environment, we do have a private cloud infrastructure that we make available, ultimately protected with Armor Anywhere, which is our technology stack that we bring to bear. Now, before we go into the session, we're going to do a fun poll questions for you. So on that, there's actually 2 poll questions we'll do. We'll do one fun one, and then we'll get serious and get into the top points. But on the fun one, the first question that we have as we initiate that poll question is, in your opinion, what is the best vintage video game? So is it Frogger, Pac-Man, Super Mario Bros, Donkey Kong, and Asteroids? I know there may be some Gen Zs or maybe millennials on here that may not have played any of these games, maybe heard of it, but I would love to get your thoughts on what your favorite vintage game is. Yas, do you have any opinion on your side as we're waiting?
I'm gonna go with Pac-Man.
That's awesome. Yeah, I
I
know
like the,
I'm sorry, going?
I said I like the graphics in Pac-Man.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I was thinking through the questions. I was like, I know this isn't vintage, but I think of like Pong or like Oregon Trail, like you have dysentery, but that's what comes to mind. Um, so it seems as though we have gotten a significant response. So again, this is a fun question. A lot of folks on the call is it's between Super Mario Bros. And Pac-Man, so which is interesting. Um, so now on the second poll question, to get a little bit more serious to our talking point today, is what level of concern do you have for your business being hacked? And so ultimately, how concerned are you of potentially getting hacked for your business? So we'd love to get your take. And as we look at the environments and as we look at research, we know that there's a significant concern across the board, just given the advanced threats that are going on in and out, and we hear it all often every day. So I'd love to see what folks are saying. And so as it's coming through, it seems as though it's between medium and high. So that's the average, and that's what we typically hear. As again, we do the market research, as we talk to our customers, as we engage with them, and continue to enhance and refine our product set. We see that that is a significant concern that our customers are sharing across the board. So that aligns with what we're seeing. So now what we're going to do is that we will go ahead and walk through setting the stage for what we're going to do today. And so as power up and level up, Yas, can you give us some insights into how we're going to structure today's session? How do we plan on doing the simulation, etc.?
Yeah, sure. We're gonna discuss different types of threat models, and we're gonna discuss our thoughts on those. And then with each threat model, we're gonna do a little simulation of what an attacker would go through to attack the victim according to the threat models that we're gonna discuss.
Awesome. Yeah, so again, this this is going to be an awesome session. So a lot of insights. We're going to do the simulation so that folks can be able to understand and see see what folks are seeing as they go through just an attack. With that, what I want to do here is just to do a higher level overview of the types of threat actors that are there in the marketplace. I know most of you, well, I know you can read the slide, so I don't want to go into the detail of each of those, but ultimately what we've seen is that there's five categories that we've categorized these threat actors. There may be more, some do less, but ultimately within these five categories, we see that there's organized crimes. Crime units or gangs that are really desired to make money. Profit is the end goal and the end game of what they're looking to do. And so an example is REvil that just came out, right, with, well, it's been since 2019, but they do a lot of ransomware as a service. But the latest announcement that just came out was on the $50 million request from Apple, because they claim that they have infiltrated and exfiltrated some of Apple's information through their vendor, right? So that's an example of organized crime. We see that there is advanced persistent threats. And so with these are more of the nation state or state-sponsored groups that are gaining that unauthorized access into customers or a person's environment, and they're usually there and remain undetected for a long period of time. And so an example of that recent one is the SolarWinds breach that we have heard, and a lot of folks have heard, attributed to APT29, which is from Russia. And then we look at insider threats. And so this is one that a lot of people miss, but this is significant in terms of the insider threats. As I was doing the research, I was just trying to see what's the most recent ones that maybe have been out in the public. We see recently that there was the GE employee who over 8 years attempted to steal company information so that they can create a rival company, and they were caught in the act. And so insider threats is something that a lot of times when you think of cyber attacks or cyber threats, or threats in general, you don't think about the folks that are actually within your organization. Now, there's hacktivists, similar to APTs. They want to bring attention to issues, or they want to be known because of what they do. And then, of course, the last one is the script kiddies and the lone wolves, right? Folks that are just doing it just for the fun of it. They're just, they have no clear motives. They may know it, or they're just working through the dark web to get existing malware or variants, and actually, or even subscribing to ransomware as a service as an example. Now, Yaz, I know I've talked a lot, but are you seeing, as you work within the threat resistant unit, are you seeing some of these activities more so on the rise, and if so, which ones do you see?
So I don't really see one more than the other. I mean, obviously with SolarWinds, we heard a whole lot about APTs, but I guess the number and what you see is really dependent on your threat space, and we have a bunch of different clients in different threat spaces, so no two threat spaces are the same. We did see a lot of hacktivists recently when things like Myanmar, the coup over there went down, and other things like that. We'll see more of defacements and whatnot, but as a whole, it's really dependent on your own threat space.
Awesome. Now that is insightful. So just based on the vertical, based on where they are, and so depending on that, you'll see certain types of type of threat actors working in there. So maybe government, you'll see a lot more of the APTs persistent in there because it's more targeted and precise. But that's really insightful. And so as we continue, what we want to do is just at a very high level share with you a way to take a look or picture or visualize how a threat actor works. One example that a lot of folks may be familiar with is this cyber kill chain from Lockheed Martin. It's coined by Lockheed Martin. And so ultimately, this helps break down each of the stages of a malware attack or an attack, where you can identify and stop it, right? And just with that though, what we know is that attack strategies are changing. So it's not always from left to right that you see it, and we're gonna go into more details there. But what we wanted to do is to use this as a backdrop to go through the first two simulations, and then we'll continue with other models as well. But at a very high level, when you look at the cyber kill chain, what the premise is that you want to attack and identify it, move to the left as early as possible in the kill chain to eliminate that presence, because as they continue to move to the right, it becomes even harder to discover and harder to stop. And so ultimately, this is, again, a backdrop that we want to share with you. This is one of many different models that are available today, but we'll use this as a preface for what we will talk about today. Now, Yaz, anything else that you want to talk about the cyber kill chain? And if not, we can maybe start walking through that demo.
So a thing to remember with the kill chain, this threat model represents threats in a linear kind of way. So that's something to think about. And when we get on to the other models, you'll see how maybe the other ones are a little bit more helpful.
Awesome. So then we'll go into the simulation.
Okay, great. Thanks. If we could initiate the attack, please. Or at this point, this is, oh, sorry, I had to stand up because my screen is small. At this point, what you're seeing is me doing some recon. These were pre-recorded because I'm pretty bad with technology and I didn't want to break it if we did it live. But right now you see me scanning a network. I'm trying to see what computers are up on my network so that I know which host, or which victim rather, I would like to attack. And so now I'm just kind of reviewing my results. And then I've picked a target, and so you will see me type in the target information. And this is all part of the recon phase of the attack. I need to gather up enough information so I can actually attack my victim. And so there you go. This brings back some information on the victim. It's telling me what ports are open, and I can see that it's got some good targetable ports open for me to possibly attack. And so I just go over here and I look at my other network scan, and I can see that again, my victim is showing that it's online. And so I'm going to go ahead and go with the victim that I have identified that might be one of the juicier grapes on the grapevine. And again, this is just showing some of the recon. There we go. Okay,
That's
next video, please.
Yeah, and a quick question on just on the recon. So is this something that you will, as a threat actor, that they typically go through of trying to identify the vulnerability or the open porch or whatever it looks like? Is that something that is common that typically happens regardless of the the threat actor or the type of threat actor?
Great question. So with this type of situation that we have right now, this is more probably low-level script kiddie trying to hack somebody situation. And when we get into things like nation states and bigger groups, they're typically going to do some recon, but a lot of their stuff depends on swag malware, the stuff we all get malware. And so they go on the number of people that are going to click on it to hopefully, play that numbers game. When you have a more targeted attack, you might see some recon like this so that they know what they can craft their attack to be like. But again, this attack we're seeing, it's me, a script kiddie. But again, if it's a really targeted attack, you can expect something like this. And when they're doing pen testing, when you hire like a red team to come and do pen testing for you, this is some of the actions that they might also take so they can do kind of a network scan and get to know the network that they're going to be testing.
That's interesting. So just to make sure I understand, so you're saying that for more of the nation states, the APT, they'll do the recon, they'll go through this. But then if you're looking at more of like the script kiddies, it's really the phishing scams that'll blast, and whoever clicks a button, gets, they get access into that environment, essentially.
I think you reversed it. So APTs, they do have a lot of resources, but they're also hoping that you're going to click on something. And if it's targeted, they'll go through a lot of this recon phase. But when it's just the stuff we all get kind of malware, the swag malware, there's not too much recon that goes into it before they send it out. They're just relying on a numbers game at that point. And that's something we'll be looking at in the next model.
Understood. Okay. And so as we go into the next thing, can you share what's going on this side?
Okay, so if we initiate this attack, what we're seeing is I am pulling up a framework. I am pulling up the Metasploit framework. It's a pen tester framework that helps pen testers do their job and discover vulnerabilities and address them. And so I'm using this framework as a script kiddie so that I can attack my victim. Unfortunately, Metasploit is used for malicious reasons sometimes. So I am pulling it up now, and I am going to pick a exploit that I know will work against a open port that I saw. So you can see I'm picking an SMB exploit because previous during the recon, I saw that the SMB port was open. And so I'm going to try to attack it to see if I can possibly get in. And so here I am just pulling up my options, making sure that I have the victim information in there, victim port in there, everything I need to craft this exploit before I can send it. And so as you see now, I exploited, or I ran the exploit, and I have a connection. And so at this point, I am on the victim machine. So if you saw in the recon, the victim machine was Windows, and I am on a Linux as the attacker. And I'm successfully on the Windows machine because I'm writing ipconfig instead of ifconfig. So those are just different things to see your IP on the different systems. And so here I'm listing the directory of the victim machine. And so I'm just browsing to see what different files are on the victim machine. At this point, I have root, so I am admin. And I will continue going through this person's machine, hopefully. Oh, I think that was it. Did it stop?
It might have. So, but with that though, it seemed pretty easy for you to exploit the victim's machine. So how quick and easy was it for you to find the vulnerability, and is it typically that easy?
So for this instance, I knew my victim, I knew the machine, so I have a little bit of the inside hand. When it is somebody, an attack like this, it could be this easy, depending on who you're attacking and what is open and if they're patched and all that. So during the recon phase, you could find some of that information out, and then you could try an attack like this to see if it works. So sometimes, yes, it could go this fast, but in real life, most hacks can take time. And yeah, so it really depends on your victim, who you're attacking, and what you're going to attack with. I know that when pen testers are pen testing a company, it can take a couple days to actually go through all the different types of vulnerabilities that they might see in a company.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's great. That's interesting information. And so as we go into, as I mentioned earlier, where we use the kill chain, cyber kill chain model initially as a backdrop for the first simulations that we showed you. Now we're going to take a look at a different model called the Diaper Bottle. And so, yes, can you help a little bit share what the Diaper Bottle is and just explain to the audience on this model?
Yeah, I actually like this model better as far as threat models go, because this is more fluid. And so when we're talking about malware infections, as we will in the next demo, it falls better on this type of model because this model is more fluid. So you have the infrastructure side, which is like your network, things that have to do with it, like DNS, IP, and things like this. And then you have your victim, the one who's going to end up, unfortunately, getting exploited. And then you have TTPs, which are used by the adversary. And those TTPs can be seen in things like the infrastructure, like maybe your bad guy always uses a certain domain or their IP space is always the same. And so those TTPs can be seen in the infrastructure. And maybe your adversary is always doing other things that make them more notable. So the TTPs can go into the adversary. So for me, I like the diamond model because it's more fluid and it keeps things kind of more realistic, especially when you're talking about malware who doesn't follow that whole entire kill chain. Sometimes it's just a little bit more fluid. It might just go to the victim, and then we develop the infrastructure and see TTPs from that malware. So for me, I like the diamond model better.
That's very interesting. And I know you mentioned TTP. Can you help the audience understand that acronym?
Oh, sorry. Tools, techniques, and procedures. It's a way for
Awesome.
us to keep track of things.
Okay. Yeah, and again, it's as we mentioned, different models. This one is more realistic of how it happens and gives that flexibility to be able to really address all the different points as well, or the different sections as well. So if we continue then, would you like to share a little bit of what we're going to see today?
So this next one, next two slides will be a malware attack. So if we could initiate this attack. And so what we're seeing here is Bob has some open emails, and apparently he's neglecting his cyber training. He's got a couple of reminders and he's got a patch now, but Bob doesn't really seem to be worried about that because he keeps giving them reminders. So he also has an email from IT. Oh, did it stop playing?
It might have. Let's see. I think that's where we had. But just continue to share what would take place on that.
Unfortunately, not sure what happened there. So Bob is going to open the email that says IT, and if we didn't have this technical difficulty, then we would be able to see that when Bob opens it, there's an attachment, and you can see a poorly formatted email. Oh, here we go. There you go. You can see that the email is poorly formatted and has an attachment. Bob's just trusting that it's from his IT department, and he's ignoring every red flag that this is not really his IT, and he's going to end up running the malware. And at this point, he realizes, oh, I've messed up. So he's going to go over and check his network connections and see if there's anything new listed. And unfortunately, there is a new connection listed. So Bob knows that he's been infected. And at this point, he's running away from his computer. If we can move on to the next slide.
Yeah, definitely.
Bob just closes everything out and runs away. All right, so we're gonna basically look at the attacker viewpoint here. The attacker is checking to see if Bob has opened it yet. As you can see, the no active sessions prior, but now a new active session is showing at the bottom. That's because Bob clicked it and has made a direct connect for the attacker to get on his system. So the attacker is pulling up Bob's session that is now listed. And now the attacker, me, is on Bob's computer, and I have full administrative privileges. As you can see, I'm in the administrator account, and I am listing what is in the directory that I'm in so that I know where I want to move to and possibly read out. So the moving.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. So this is almost real life. I made a mistake right here, and instead of moving into a directory, I am trying to read the directory, which is going to fail. And that's pretty real life, right? We all make mistakes. And so now I'm like, oh, I need to actually move to this directory. And so I move to that directory on the victim machine, making sure I'm there. And there we go. And so now I'm seeing that there are files in this folder called cookies. Looks pretty interesting. So I want to read one of these text files. Maybe I'll see some credentials. So here I go listing out what is in this file, this administrator file in the cookies folder. And I see that I possibly have some hashed credentials. So from here as an attacker, I could try to dehash these and see what goodies are in there and see if there's any other places I could move to, or if they are credentials, something I could log into an email or something like this. But at this point, I am administrator on his system, and I could put more malware if I wanted to.
Wow, that's interesting. And so just for even with that, so as a user, so if I had a laptop or a desktop, is there an indication outside of course having cybersecurity tools in place? Is there any way as a user I would know that there is someone else in my system that I should be aware of?
So that's a good question. If your tools, your antivirus didn't alert you, possibly if your computer is acting a little bit slower, or it's just maybe glitching, or you notice some weird things, you might know, but most likely you'll have no idea. The only indication that you might have is you realize I shouldn't have opened that email, and then you go and dig deeper. And that's probably it. A lot of times when infections happen, people don't know that they're even infected. And sometimes we've seen where people opened up an email, closed the email, and wanted to pretend like they didn't know how it happened. And we have, unfortunately, logs that show that they opened it.
That's interesting. And I know we're going to go into, as we continue the session, we're going to give tips, tricks and tips to help prevent some of these things. And cybersecurity awareness training is one of the significant ones that we'll touch on. And so with that, it's how do you equip that, the human shield, right? Your human firewall, how do you protect or equip your employees and folks that you interact with to have those cybersecurity hygienes as they interact with your data on a day-to-day basis. So that's really interesting to see. And so just post the simulations that we just went through. What we're going to just talk on then is just why the challenges that folks are facing, the top threats that are costly, etc. And also we'll give you those tips and tricks. So at a very, very high level, and I won't go through this slide, we know that it is pretty expensive for customers when they have been hacked or when there's a malicious activity in their network. And so whether it is monetary costs, whether it is reputational costs, whether it's on IP costs, right, their intellectual property, there is a significant impact. And when we look at, especially on the small, medium businesses and mid-sized businesses, we know that a significant portion of those businesses go out like within 6 months of a hack or attack in their network. And so what we want to do is to encourage you as you continue, as you go through the session, and as you continue to do research, take cybersecurity and put it at the forefront of your mind, because it's critical to ensure that your systems are protected and that you're protected as an organization, because it is impactful and there is significant cost and impact. One on this one is on the ransomware, right? We talked about there's $20 billion cost for ransomware in 2020 alone. And so just Yaz, on the ransomware, is there any insights on the trends of ransomware or data that we're seeing that in terms of the leaks? Because we do hear about it day in, day out about, the ransomware taken in, it's encrypted, they're asking for money, etc. But any trends that you're seeing for ransomware?
So yeah, unfortunately, we've seen an increase in ransomware during COVID times, just because targeted's got a little bit easier, and we found that more people are willing to pay to get their systems unlocked, wait around to try to find a free decryption tool. We see that a lot in like healthcare. When they're getting hit, they don't really have that time to wait. Time is not only money in healthcare, time can be lives. And so unfortunately, they've become bigger targets just because the attackers know that most likely they're not going to wait around for a free decryption tool when they can just go ahead, pay the ransom, and get back online. So we do see that, and we do see that bad guys aren't the only ones taking advantage of these breaches and data loss. We do see other companies taking advantage of it, selling leaks online, so users can check to see if they're affected. So it's a pretty lucrative business, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate for sure. And so as we talk about the cost, we know that there are some challenges to why some folks may not necessarily look at cybersecurity, or it's a daunting thing to have more of a robust cybersecurity program in place. Three of the main things that we see across the board, market research within Armor, as we talk to customers, etc., is that the talent shortage, right? As we see attack increases, which is the middle section here, as we see the attacks are increasing, right? There's new types of variants. There's increase because of COVID or work from home. We see also that there is not a lot of people, the expertise is lacking, right? So individuals are finding it hard to find those employees or those cybersecurity experts to be able to help shield them and protect them from these attacks. We also do see that if you look, maybe enterprise companies, they do have a little bit more resources and budget. However, because of the robustness of types of attacks, it's pretty cumbersome and complex to manage. And then the third section is that just that complexity, right? So when it comes to tools, there's tools that are popping up left or right, single-use tools that protect certain types of malware, certain types of aspect to an attack. And so it becomes so overwhelming. I think one of the stats that we see is that there's about 3,000 different tools or cybersecurity vendors out there, and companies are having to try to stitch all these things together. Again, lack of expertise. There's all these variants, so it's a bad house, right? Trying to put it all together to ensure that they have a robust program in place, and so it makes it pretty challenging for organization as we talk to them to be able to protect and ensure that they have coverage, adequate coverage to be able to effectively secure their environment. And so as we continue, we'll share some tips and tricks of how the things that you should be focused on, as well as, as we've gone through and showed you how sort of easy it can be, right, for threat actors to actually get access to organizations' environments. We want to also give you the things to be looking out for and the ways to help you protect yourself. And so before we dive into those tips and tricks, what we want to do is to do another poll question before we do that. And so with the poll question, if I can get my mouse, with the poll questions that we're going to initiate, essentially the question is, what level of concern do you have for your business being hacked? I know we've gone through we've talked through the E's a little bit. Actually, forgive me, that's actually the previous poll question. So this poll question is, how prepared do you feel about securing your data from hackers? And so I know we've just gone through the E's of it, and just we've done the simulation. But do you feel that you're prepared to secure your data from hackers? So I'd love to see what you guys think, or where you are. And for Yaz, as we're looking for the poll question, for folks that you talk to, like any indicators of like the preparedness in terms of protecting themselves from hacks?
Oh, I'm sorry, were you asking me?
Yeah, just as you've engaged with customers in the past, like how for the folks that you've talked with, how prepared do they indicate that they are? Is there any feedback at all?
You hear that a lot of people are overly confident. A lot of companies and clients are just overly confident, and it's a little scary, especially when this isn't from Armor, but I know someone and her company said that the cybersecurity team wasn't bringing in money, so they weren't getting money, and yet it's companies like that that think they're the most prepared when they're underfunding the people who are actually protecting their assets the most. So it can be a little scary when you talk to people and the community about this question, really.
Understood. Yeah, so there can be some overconfidence that happens, but not necessarily the reality, right? So that's interesting. And for the folks on the bridge, forgive me, my nose as I talk, it's getting a little bit more stuff, so bear with me here. But so just as a result of the poll question, what we see is that about 43% feel prepared, so less than half. Actually, 6% feel very prepared. So half of the folks on this bridge feel prepared, and then we have others that are more neutral and somewhat prepared, so but not fully confident. And as we go into the next section, what we want to do is to give you some tips and tricks and things to consider as you look to enhance and refine your security program to make it a little bit more robust. So Yas, as we set up that stage for that, could you give some insights into some of the tips and the things that folks should be looking at and thinking about?
User training is definitely important. Users are the #1 risk, in cybersecurity, because they're always curious and clicking on things. I know I'm always curious and clicking on things. So yeah, really user training, awareness, keeping up to date with, what's going on. If you're too busy to keep up, then have a team that can keep up with the trends. Things are evolving all the time. Attacks are evolving. The TTPs we see actors using are evolving. Like, things are always changing, and they're always trying to find new ways to get in. We still have 0 days. So you definitely need to be on top of trends and what's going down. And if you can't be, definitely having a team that can be is very important. Making sure that you're patching when you can patch. Weighing your risk factors. Can you take this risk if we don't patch? And then if you don't patch this time, and then a new vulnerability comes out that's playing off that other vulnerability, how many vulnerabilities are you willing to let pile up and stack before it's a good time to patch? So definitely being aware of risk versus reward in that aspect. Ensuring that your data is backed up. I learned in college like cold sites and warm sites, but then I got in the real world, and it seems like a lot of companies don't have something like that in place. They have one source of truth, as a teammate of mine would say, and that's a high risk. If that goes down, then what are you going to do with your data? If that gets attacked by ransomware, what are you going to do? Are you ready? So just kind of going through the preparedness as it talks to your data, like how prepared are you if something bad happens, and just being aware when there's like breaches and leaks and stuff. Is your company affected by the leaks? Are any of your employees in these leaks? Are any of your people who take care of your security, are their credentials leaked? Because what happens if the person who's in charge of keeping your whole entire security team, what if their creds are leaked and now somebody has admin privileges to get into your servers? it's pretty bad. So you want to make sure that, you're aware of these things. And if you yourself cannot be aware, then having a team be aware is great. Knowing your threat landscape is important. Whether you're a company or an individual, knowing your individual threat landscape is important too. Who do you work for? Are you a target? Do you have any information that might be, juicy for an attacker? So that helps you to protect yourself at home. I know what I do in the industry, so I know that at my house, I need to have, certain infrastructure in my own house set up so that I'm not attacked. I have kids and they get online, so I need to have my infrastructure set up so my kids aren't, vulnerable to anything or downloading malware, because that could happen too. So even as an individual, I have to know my threat landscape. And, definitely as a company, you need to know your threat landscape, because your threats are not going to be the same as everybody. Bank of America and Department of Energy are going to have two different threat landscapes. And it's very important to understand how that, how that works and what you need to do to protect your, unique situation.
That's awesome. Very insightful. It's actually interesting when you talk about your kids, right? It's how do you segment even your personal lives in terms of the digital, you're right, the digital landscape that you use, right? So segmentation within that is so critical as well. So great insights, yes. And so ultimately with that, as we continue, as we come to a close to the session, what we want to do is also share with you about Armor, right? Armor, we're a cybersecurity company, as I mentioned, a cloud security company. We protect our customers' environments in any environment. And so how we do that is that we've built a consolidated security platform that our customers are able to leverage and utilize to secure those environments. And ultimately, whether it's in the public cloud, in a private cloud, hybrid cloud, or endpoints with your laptops and desktops, or existing infrastructures that you've built. So as an example, you may have a firewall sitting there, but the firewall is just, again, device management. You set the policy, you set and forgotten it. We're able to ingest those data back into our middle cloud security platform. And then that's where we do that analysis. So our threat resistant units, they're able to do the threat research, they're able to bring in the threat intelligence, they're able to bring in the insights. We correlate based on the data points coming through to really identify those issues that are potential malicious activities in a customer's environment and provide that response and an insight into what a customer needs to do to address those threats. So we're not just alerted, we're not just identifying issues, but we're actually giving you that insight to say, let's reduce the noise, which we see a lot in cybersecurity technologies today. Let's help you reduce that noise with our technology platform. And let's give you that information that you need to address the real threats and the real issues that are in your network. And ultimately, you can see that through our portal, or you can use and receive that or consume that via API if you have existing infrastructure in place. And so you can integrate that and use our APIs to be able to manage your security program as well. And ultimately with that, as you do need help and support, we do have cybersecurity expertise and experts that are available that can help walk you through those insights that we provide as well. And so at a high level, that's who Armor is and that's what we do. What I want to encourage you to do is that as we continue, we're going to open it up for Q&A shortly. We do have resources available online that we have made available and that you can be able to reference and utilize as you continue to take a look at how to make your security programs a little bit more robust. And so at this time, what we'd like to do is to take a few questions from the audience. If you have not already submitted your questions, please use that questions function. If you haven't and Chris Hinckley hasn't responded as well, please add the questions right now. So while you're submitting your questions, I do want to ask all attendees to participate in a quick survey that will be sent after the broadcast, where you can provide us a little feedback on how the session went today. Also, if you think about any questions once the broadcast is closed, you can also submit those questions in the post-broadcast survey that we'll send out as well. And so if you'd like to attend any upcoming events, please sign up at armor.com/events. So with that said, what we'll do is we'll jump into the questions. I'll go through and answer any questions that is available or that has been posed. So give me a second as I pull it up.
Do you mind if I answer some of these questions that were about the demo?
Yes, for sure. Please do.
Okay, cool. So I'm not sure if these were answered yet, but when I said dehash earlier, so sometimes or most of the time, passwords are stored in an encryption routine. And depending on the encryption routine used to store the passwords, an attacker could brute force the encryption and uncover your password. And there's many tools and encryption routines. So it's just a matter if the attacker knows the right thing and right tool to use, but there's so many brute forcers that it really doesn't take an attacker too much effort to get through a password. Check a rainbow table maybe. Yeah, that's one of the tools and possible ways. There's sometimes hints when you look at a password that's been hashed. You can sometimes look at the way it's formed to know if it's like a base 64. You can tell if it's like a MD5 salted hash, because then you'll see maybe the key at the end. So it really depends on what you're going to use, but a rainbow table could be used. What tools were used by the attacker in the example earlier? So I used the Metasploit framework, and that's the pen testing framework that I mentioned earlier. And I just took one of the exploits that they had available. And I knew which exploit to use because when I did the recon, I saw their SMB port was open. And so I know that Metasploit has SMB exploits available. And so I just picked that one and used that one. Okay. I think I covered all the demo questions.
Awesome. That's good. And then there's another question of what kind of them are available for end users. So it talked about what have you seen in the market in terms of extended threat management services into containers, and what services can Armor bring to the table? And so I don't know, Diaz, if you want to talk about containers in general, but I do know that there's container security specific solutions available to be able to address during runtime for containers and to be able to identify issues within the container environment. But yes, I don't know if you any additional context on the container side.
Are we able to unmute Hinckley? Because I think he could answer that perfectly if he hasn't answered that already.
Okay. And if we can, Chris, please feel free to jump in. And just secondarily, in terms of containers, as we try to see if we can unmute Chris, is that within Armor, we do have a vulnerability scanning solution or capability to be able to identify vulnerabilities within the container images within the public cloud registries or public registries. And so that is something that we have available for our customers. And we'll continue to add additional capabilities for container security for runtime. But ultimately, for us, we believe in defense in depth. And so with that, it's not just on the containers, we're able to identify OS level. We're able to also bring correlation across the board in multiple different environments. So whether you're on that laptop or desktop, where a lot of the 70% of threats originate, to your cloud or your network devices, we're able to correlate that to identify if there's any vulnerability or any issues. But ultimately, we do have container specific, but then also more defense in depth that is a lot more robust.
Sure. So you answered that question. This is Chris Hinckley, by the way. Thanks for chiming me in. Yes. So just you answered that question pretty much on the head, Ike. Containerization, like you mentioned, is becoming more prevalent, more popular, kind of like we saw the move to cloud in years past. And like you said, we protect workloads, whether they're servers or workstations across the board, Linux and Windows, regardless of where they live. And definitely containerization is on our radar, and hopefully we provide some of those solutions in the future for Docker and Kubernetes and the like.
Yeah, and just address that the vulnerability scanning, we do have that pre-runtime as well.
Absolutely.
So it's collective. So So that's it. So if there's no other questions, I'll take a couple of more minutes if there's any, or just a couple of seconds. If there's any other questions that will come through, let me scan it real quick, and then we can see. No, this is great. So there's a question of, can I get a copy of this? And the answer is yes, we will have a copy of the recorded, as well as the deck that we'll make available to those that attended the session. So with all that, what I wanted to say is thank you all for joining today. I hope you found it very valuable. Yes, thank you. And Chris, thank you for your time and expertise. So for all of you on the call, please visit arbor.com for case studies, white papers, and details on just all our solutions and the way that we approach threat detection or response and how we approach cybersecurity in the marketplace. So thank you once again for the time and have a great one.